guys, it's Trina and this is my November and December end of the year reading wrap up. I was a host in the 'Tis the Season-a-thon readathon at the first week of December, and I have completely failed as a host because I never was able to sit down and film a wrap up. I can only film right now on weekends, and that last weekend was just really busy for me. I was not able to pull it off, so I apologize for that. I was going to just do my 'Tis the Season-a-thon wrap up right now, and I was like, you know what? I never did my November wrap up either. It's time for my December wrap up. I will just do it all together. I've got, I think, 21 or 22 books to get through in this, so I'm gonna try to do this concisely. Starting out with what I read in November, I've got a couple of series I will talk about together, and the first thing I want to talk about is the Last Survivors series by Susan Beth Pfeffer. There are 4 books in this series, and I read the first 3, and this was one of the things that when I go on Twitter and say give me a random number and then correlate that with what's on my Goodreads watch to read shelf at that number, this is one of the books that has been chosen, and a lot of people said I would like it because it's a survival type story, like post-apocalyptic, and that element I did love. It is YA post-apocalyptic where the moon has been pushed closer to the earth, and this does all sorts of weird things to like the gravitational pull, to the weather, and society collapses and people are just trying to survive. The first book follows a teenage girl and her family in a rural town. The second book is actually a companion novel, The Dead and the Gone, and it is following a boy and his sisters who live in New York City. So they're in a very urban area, and the way that this event has affected these two different types of cities was very different, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Just, you're right there with them at the very start and you watch how everything is affected. Like, what would we do if today, like, the electricity went out, food became scarce, nothing else was being made? Like, what would we do? And I love concepts like that. Book 3 then shows the characters from book 1 and book 2 meeting up, like their timelines then connect, and I really liked that about the third book. But the third book ended in a way that was so ableist and it really made me mad. There's a character who gets injured and is then paralyzed, and because the collapse of this world has happened, there's no medical care that someone with that kind of a disability would be able to get, and I understand that perhaps this character would have had a harder time compared to like today when people can get some medical care and they have some devices that can help them if they need it and if they want it. But this character, basically all of the other characters in the book kept saying like, oh, you poor thing, your life is not worth living anymore, now you're just dead weight, your life is worthless, it would be a mercy if you had just been killed instead. And so this decision is made that someone kills that character because that's the better thing to do, because that person has no value anymore. And I would have been totally okay if a post-apocalyptic world wanted to talk about and explore disability, but this was written off so badly. It didn't discuss the situation in a healthy or intelligent or prolonged way, so made me mad. And at that point I did not want to finish the series. There was only one more book left, but I know that the 4th book follows another of the side characters who I know that they would have been affected by that character's death, and I didn't want to spend a whole other book being reminded of that trash, so I did not finish the series. Next, I picked up Partials by Dan Wells. This is another one that people on Twitter chose for me, and Partials is a YA dystopian. This is like after a post-apocalyptic event where people have created clones to fight our wars for us, but then the clones took over. We follow a teenage girl who lives in like the one last city of the real humans, survivors, and I actually thought this was a lot better than I had expected. I really did like the dystopian element, the scientific element. So, liking the first book, I then picked up the second book, Fragments, and I ended up DNFing Fragments because I was so bored. I think I got like at least probably halfway and I just wasn't liking it. I felt like I was waiting for something to happen. It wasn't exploring things from book 1 in an interesting way, I guess. Plus, the author introduces a new character who spends a lot of time in the narrative, and this is an overweight man, and he is constantly fat shamed, and also it's not made clear whether or not he has a mental disability, but he is treated as if he does, and as if this is a very bad and childish thing, and just because of his mental ability and his weight, he is constantly belittled and called childish, like he is a man-child, and I just didn't really like the language around that. Besides that, again, the story just wasn't interesting to me, so I was like, I liked book 1, I'm gonna leave it at that. If book 1 were a standalone, I would have been perfectly happy. I also finally finished the Darker Shade of Magic first trilogy. I know she is writing some more books in this series that it's more like a companion series. This is an adult fantasy series by V.E. Schwab, and the second book, A Gathering of Shadows, I really loved it. There is a competition in the story of this one that I just really am finding lately. I think I said in my last wrap-up video, I love competitions. That is a buzzword that will grab me in with books lately, so I did love that aspect of it, and there's like all of these like secrets and stuff around that. I really liked it. With The Conjuring of Light, I did enjoy it as well. I really liked the characters, I liked the magic, the type of magic and the stuff that was happening, but I felt like the pacing of these two books was a little bit weird because book 1 ended where it felt like a standalone, book 2 has this big competition, and then at the very end of book 2 it just kind of like switches gears and sets up book 3, and book 3 I felt like it just kind of like took its time. It's a very long book, and I felt like it was perhaps too long for the amount of stuff that actually happened. And I will talk about Vengeful next because it is also by V.E. Schwab. This is an adult science fiction series. This is the sequel to Vicious. And these books are about two characters who give themselves superpowers. It's a world where there are many characters with superpowers, and then the two of them were best friends, and they end up basically becoming like enemies. I loved book 1. I loved it so much, and I think that kind of set me up to be disappointed. With Vengeful, I'm so sad about it because I was waiting for this book to come out for years. I always wanted there to be more to that story. We finally got it, and I was let down. Now, there are so many elements to Vengeful that I love, that I think are wonderful. We get new characters. The characters are amazing. Their abilities are amazing. I love the abilities in this, but I felt like it kind of lost focus. We got these new different storylines that I felt like they got a little bit messy, like they weren't cohesive. It didn't feel like one book. I honestly feel like this book could have followed the new characters and only the new characters and left Eli and Victor out of it, and the story would have been fine. But instead, everything is thrown in and it just felt like spaghetti. I wouldn't recommend the audio because of the format of this book. There are a lot of time jumps. Like if you're familiar with Vicious, the same type of storytelling takes place in this one, but because I wasn't able to physically look in the book at the time, I didn't have it to flip back and say, what was the last chapter? When was it set? The next chapter would pick up at a different timeline, and I was kind of confused as to the order of events. I do think I would have enjoyed this better if I had read the print version, so that's totally on me. That totally did affect my rating because it just didn't convey well over audio. So if you're wondering how you should read it, I would recommend print. Next is The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas, which is the prequel to the Throne of Glass series. I wanted to reread this whole series before the finale came out, and I've only read this one out of like 7 books, so I'm desperately behind on that. I will see you guys in 20 years with my thoughts on Kingdom of Ash when I finally do reread the rest of the series. I don't have much to say about this or the series in general that hasn't already been said 10 million times, but I did really enjoy rereading this one because I picked up on a whole lot of foreshadowing. I listened to Sea Witch by Sarah Henning. This is a young adult Little Mermaid retelling. I did find it enjoyable. I liked spending time with the characters, and I mean, I think because it was about mermaids and it actually had real mermaids in it, I think that's part of what I was interested in. It does have so many parallels with the original Little Mermaid story. Like, you can see parallels to Ariel in the main character, even though the main character is the Sea Witch. I do think it's worth a shot if you are looking for a Little Mermaid retelling. I also read WILDCARD by Marie Lu, which is the second and final book in her WARCROSS duology. It's a YA science fiction series about video games and virtual reality and a girl who is a hacker. I really enjoyed how this book portrayed the villain and the good guy. I think Marie Lu is an author who really explores heroes and villains. In all of her series, I think something like that comes into play. And I really liked where the second book went. It kind of branched away from the game, the competition, the virtual reality, and it became more about how much do we let social media and the internet influence our lives and control our lives, and that's a concept that I really, really like. I listened to Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson. This is a YA supernatural kind of spooky fun book. The main character is a fat Latinx witch and her best friend dies. Everyone thinks it's a suicide, but she thinks she was murdered, so she does a spell to resurrect her best friend and find out who killed her, but it also happens to resurrect two of her school's mean girls who were also killed recently. So she has to basically like hide the fact that she's got a gang of zombies following her around and trying to solve a murder. Like there's a murder mystery in there. This was just a very fun read, and I really liked how it explored the girls' friendships, their relationships, and like getting to know the mean girls, and how sometimes you don't give people a chance to prove your misconceptions about them wrong. Like I really liked that aspect of it, and overall I thought it was fun, very, very fun. And the audiobook is narrated by Rebecca Soler, who is my favorite audiobook narrator recently, so I had a really good time listening to this one. Then I read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. This is the first thing that I have read by them. These are two different authors who co-write adult romances. So this is an adult romance. It does have some explicit sexy scenes. It's about a man and a woman who are really good friends, and they don't want to mess up their friendship by having any sort of romance. There's so much tension in it and so much chemistry between these characters that you want to root for them the whole time. You want to be like, shut up and just kiss already. So I really enjoyed this. There are a few things that happen in this book that I didn't love, but I was willing to overlook them in the moment because this is the first time I have read anything by these authors. I'm not very familiar with the adult romance genre, so I was like, I don't know if these are like staple tropes or what, but to me I had a lot of fun, and so that was really what influenced my rating. I also read Roomies by Christina Lauren, and in this book I started to see that some of those little things I didn't like about Josh and Hazel were also present in Roomies. And so because I was seeing that maybe this is a pattern for Christina Lauren, I didn't like it as much in Roomies, and I couldn't kind of overlook it as much. This is about a man who is in the country illegally, but he is like a musical prodigy. The female main character's uncle is like the writer and director of a big Broadway musical, and he really wants to hire this guy. So the two main characters get married so that he can get his work visa and perform in the musical. I did enjoy the musical aspects of it, but I just couldn't stop comparing this to Josh and Hazel because I had read it so recently. So I didn't like the characters as much. I didn't like the setup as much with the fake marriage, and to me the romance just, it was very insta-lovey on both sides. I didn't see very much tension, very much build up there. You know, maybe I shouldn't have read them so close together, but Roomies, I didn't like it as much. But it's not terrible by any means. Don't let me dissuade you from reading it, you know. It's not awful. Just don't read these two back to back. I listened to And the Trees Crept In by Dawn Kurtagich. Woo, this book. It's a YA horror novel. It's about two sisters who run away from their abusive father to live with their aunt. One day their aunt tells them, never go into the woods or he will get you. And then the aunt disappears. The two girls don't know if she was serious, but then they start noticing that the woods are coming closer and closer and closer to the house. I listened to the audiobook. I'm so glad I did, because the audiobook is the creepiest thing I have ever listened to in my life. It is a single narrator, but the production quality of this audiobook was over the top. They have like thunder and storm sound effects. There are music sound effects, like that really chilling, like one piercing note that gets louder and louder as the scene goes on, and it really builds tension and it makes you feel like a jump scare is about to happen. They would distort her voice to be the voice of like the creeper man, so it's like this really low, raspy, creepy voice that was giving me nightmares. And there are certain scenes in the book that are journal entries of the main character, and whenever the narrator would read those, whoever edited that audiobook would overlay her whispering in the background. She's whispering something in the background, and so it's so chilling. It was really freaky. It really got to me. It like really spiked my anxiety, my paranoia. While reading this, I could only listen to it during daylight hours, and it even freaked out my cat. Oh, I loved it. It was like honestly one of the best audiobooks that I've listened to. There's only a little bit of formatting in this book. Sometimes there are the letters, sometimes sections are in handwriting font or they enlarge the font for effect, but I overall think that the audiobook is the better format of this story. I don't think you lose any of the formatting. In fact, I think you gain formatting with the audio. I also read After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is an adult contemporary novel. It is about a marriage that is kind of falling apart. They have lost the romance, they aren't in love anymore, and so it explores what these two characters are going to do about it. Do they want to fix their marriage or do they want to separate? And what I really loved about this story is that the main character, really she's going on a journey of like self-identity and her own growth. She's exploring her own interests, her friendships, her relationships with her family as a daughter, as a sister. I just really thought it was a great exploration of her journey, like her personal growth. I really liked that. I listened to ARCHENEMIES by Marissa Meyer, which is the second book in her Renegades series. I think it'll be a trilogy, but this is a YA story about superheroes and supervillains, and we follow a guy in the superheroes and a girl in the supervillains, and she has like infiltrated their ranks to overthrow them. What I really loved about the second book is that there was much more of the element of secret identities and Nova actually doing the things that book one kept saying she was gonna do. She was actually starting to try and undermine them, and so they're really starting to butt heads and stuff. There was a lot more payoff in book two to me, and I really enjoyed it. Again, I feel like this book maybe was a little bit too long for what actually happened in it, but I love this series. I think it's fun, and Rebecca Soler does the voice of Nova in the audiobooks, and I just basically love anything she does. So, going for what I read during Tis the Season-a-thon, we had 5 challenges and I read 4.5 books. I started out the week by finishing ARCHENEMIES because I was like halfway through it because I just didn't plan that one out very well, but I ended up just counting it as a book read during that week because I read at least half of it, so that one counted for read a book with red on the cover. We had our group read, which was Snow in Love. This is a collection of 4 short stories that are holiday romances, and they are by Melissa De La Cruz, Nick Stone, Kasie West, and Aimee Friedman. This one was our optional group buddy read, and also I used this to fit the challenge of read a book while listening to Christmas music. All of these have a Christmas theme, but 2 of the stories have Jewish main characters, so Hanukkah is also something that is included. So the other host and I discussed this book and our thoughts on it in the live show that we did at the end of that week, and I think we all pretty much felt the same. The first story by Kasie West and the last story by Nick Stone were really good. They are standouts. For me, they were both 5-star stories, and the second and third stories, the ones in the middle, we didn't like those as much. I would recommend this solely for stories 1 and 4. I just think they were so cute, and like they did what they were supposed to. They're sweet little holiday romances. For the challenge of reading a warm and cozy book, I chose Dashing Through the Snow by Debbie Macomber, and it was not really warm and cozy. It's an adult romance about characters who can't get a flight out. They want to get home for Christmas, and there's only one rental car left, and they decide to share the rental car and road trip across the country. And they're strangers. And I was like, oh, that sounds like it'll be warm and cozy because they're gonna be cramped in like close quarters in this road trip. It's gonna be a romance. It's gonna be like this slow burn as they get to know each other. It was not a slow burn. It was very insta-love in a bad way. I don't hate insta-love as a rule, but this was not good, and the writing was just not good. It was trite, it was contrived, it was so... There's a time and a place for books like that, and it is not with me. It's not my usual genre, so if you like it, I'm not trying to like knock you or say you have bad taste or whatever. This just was not for me, and I found it a little bit ridiculous. It was a little bit out there. Like the characters that they come across, things were just silly. It didn't really deliver on what I was wanting from it. However, that cute, cozy, romantic road trip, actually I got that out of Snow in Love, out of Kasie West story, so I still got those vibes I wanted, just not from this. I really hated this book and I gave it 1 star. I've only given 2 books this entire year a 1-star rating, and they were both in this video. So Fun times. This one is actually under 250 pages, so it didn't give me the warm and cozy vibes, so I counted it for the read a short book challenge. For the holiday themed book challenge, all of these could fit that, but I had picked out The Afterlife of Holly Chase by Cynthia Hand. This is a retelling of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This is young adult, and it follows a girl who is a Scrooge. She's very materialistic, very vain, and one day she is visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to be, and told basically she needs to turn her life around. She doesn't, she dies, and she ends up working as a ghost, as the ghost of Christmas past. This was not only a fun read, but it had a lot of, like, you know, personal growth with the main character, and my favorite thing about it is it's not only a retelling, but it's also kind of an analysis of the original. Like, in this world, A Christmas Carol, the book, actually exists. They all reference it, and they kind of just like pull apart and examine the different archetypes and characters from the original and talk about them in this book, and I really liked that. It gave me a bit more understanding of A Christmas Carol, so I really liked what it did. For a Christmas read, this one was absolutely a perfect fit. Last book I will be reviewing of the year is One Day in December by Josie Silver. This ended up counting for the Warm and Cozy Challenge. This is an adult novel. It's a debut, and I cannot believe this is the author's first book because I found it to be incredibly well written. It is about a man and a woman who one day they make eye contact out of a bus window, and then the bus drives off and they never see each other again. But the girl spends many years actually wondering, what would have happened if I had just gotten off the bus and talked to him? And then a few years later she ends up meeting him at a Christmas party because he is her best friend's new boyfriend. So what will you do in that situation? Do you tell your best friend, hey, that's the guy I've been crushing on for years? Like, does she have dibs, or should she respect her friend who says she's in love with this guy? I was really invested in the friendship of these two women. The idea of cheating is something that's brought up a lot, you know, like because she has a crush on her best friend's boyfriend, but I didn't think that it was portrayed harmfully. It actually unpacked Laurie's feelings of what was right, what was wrong, why was she feeling this way, what would her options be. And so to me, it was a beautiful story, and it had so much more depth than I expected. I expected just a fluffy romance, and it was much more than that. I loved that these characters were flawed. They didn't always do the right thing, and then they actually process that and why it wasn't the right thing. Sometimes they're really unlikable, but just because they're flawed did not mean they were completely irredeemable. So even though I hated them all at some point, by the end it brought things back around in such a way that you could feel fulfilled by everything. And guys, I was blown away by it. Like, can you tell I've been gushing about it for several minutes, probably longer than any other book mentioned, but whoa, it was just an incredible ride, and I adored it. I adored it. That's it for my last reading wrap up of the year. I will be posting a video on my favorites of the year. I don't know that I'm going to do a least favorites video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the comments. Bye!